Good morning again, and thanks to Alison for inviting us to this presentation. My name is Kaschka Watson, and I have beside me my colleague Zaineb Ali. We're from the Ministry of Advanced Education and Skills Development, and we're just going to share this morning with parents what are some of the great financial assistance that are out there. OSAP, of course, but there are tons of other more financial assistance that parents can get from the particular institution that their child is planning on attending. But today we're going to specifically speak about OSAP. So what is it, and how can students and parents benefit from the Ontario Student Assistance Program? So without further ado, let's continue with our presentation. So what is OSAP? So a lot of parents might hear about OSAP, but they don't really know how it works. So OSAP, an Ontario Student Assistance Program. So it's funded by the federal and the provincial government. So it's those two bodies of government coming together to support families and their children or potential students to pursue post-secondary education. And it's based on a needs-based assistance evaluation. So with the federal government and the provincial government coming together, they come together in terms of grants and loans that they offer to families to support them with their financial pursuit of education. So the grants amount that they receive from the government, that's money that they get that they don't have to pay back. Okay, and the loans amount, that's money they'll have to pay back, but not until the student has graduated from university or college. And with OSAP, in terms of assistance, parents and students can always choose to take the grant portion and not the loans portion, so that when they're finished with university, they don't have any debt, they don't have any loans to pay back. So you always have that option. However, you're evaluated for both, so both are available to you. Okay, so in terms of OSAP loan, so while students are studying full-time at the college or university level, their loans doesn't have any interest, and it's payment free while they're studying full-time. So they normally get a 6 months grace period after they've completed university to start thinking about paying back on their loan. So they don't need to make any loan payments while they're studying full-time. There's no interest charge on the provincial portion of their student loan, but there's an interest amount charge on the federal portion of their student loan. And the government, we have this system in place called RAP, which is the Repayment Assistance Plan. So upon completion of university or college, if students are having difficulty repaying back the loan amount that they borrowed from the government, we have the Repayment Assistance Plan, which they can access from our website. So they can call them, tell them their situation, say, you know what, I'm not currently working right now, I won't be able to make my minimum payment towards my interest, how can you assist me? And if they're qualified, their interest amount in terms of monthly payment towards their loan can be paid for them, or the amount can be reduced. So families need to know that there's this system in place to support them, even when their child has completed post-secondary education. Who is eligible for OSAP? So we know about OSAP, but who can get OSAP? So be eligible for OSAP, lots of people are eligible for OSAP. Lots of students and mature students are eligible for OSAP. So you have to meet some criteria to be eligible for OSAP. So some of these criteria involve being a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident or a protected person. You have to be an Ontario resident. An Ontario resident means that you're living in Ontario for at least 12 months without studying full-time. And you have to currently attending or entering an OSAP approved program or school. So all the list of approved schools are located on our website, which is ontario.ca/OSAP. You can see the particular university or college that you're interested in. Once it's listed there, then it will fall under the criteria for approved OSAP. Also, students have to be entering or enrolled in a degree, certificate, or diploma that is at least 12 weeks long to be qualified for OSAP. Can a student get OSAP if they study outside of Ontario? And a lot of parents have this asked this question a lot because they said, you know what, I'm living in Ontario, but my student want to go to a university in BC. Will they be eligible for OSAP? So let's find out. So yes, students can still receive OSAP if they enroll in a public college or university program outside of Ontario. So the criteria that I went through earlier, if they meet those criteria, they can study outside of Ontario and they'll be getting their full OSAP funding, as well as they can even study outside of Canada in the US, Germany, Australia if they want, as long as they meet the criteria that I described, and they will be getting partial OSAP funding if they study outside of the country. So there's a lot of opportunities for students and for parents. Their options are wide, so they can explore those. So how is OSAP aid determined? And this is the big one because a lot of families think that, oh, OSAP is only dependent on how much they earn, and that's not necessarily the full truth because it's a lot of factors being taken into consideration. So in terms of being eligible for OSAP and to determine how much funding a particular student will get is dependent on his or her unique circumstances because every family situations are different. And obviously the whole structure and function of OSAP is to support families who are on a needs base. So it's a combination of educational costs, which includes tuition, books, living expenses, supplementary fee, equipment fees, and we put that against any form of contribution that the student can make to his or her education, as well as the parental contribution, and as well as any scholarships or bursaries that they might get from the university or college that they're attending. So we put those together and we determine the financial need of the family and the student, and we determine how much OSAP funding he or she will be getting. And we have our OSAP calculator on our website. So I'll pass it over to my colleague Zaineb, who will continue with the presentation.
Yeah, numbers, how much you can actually qualify for OSAP. Like Kaschka said, we do have an OSAP calculator on our website. So if you go to ontario.ca/OSAP, you can find out how much you can qualify for in terms of loans and grants. So as long as you populate the fields that are on the OSAP calculator and hit calculate, it'll give you a breakdown for how much loans you can get versus how many grants you can get. And keep in mind that if you are, if the student that's applying for OSAP has a disability, they do have the option to check that off in their actual application, and then they can qualify for additional grants. However, when they go to try out the calculator, the disability option isn't there. So the number that they see when they use the calculator, they will get additional grants on top of the number that they see if they are a student with a disability. So that's just something to keep in mind. So there's the actual question of how students would go about applying for OSAP. So it's super easy this year. There is an integrated application option. So when students are applying for university or college, they can apply for OSAP and through that same portal. So if they scroll down to the bottom and just click on the OSAP banner, it'll redirect them to the OSAP website, and it'll actually export some of their information from the university application portal and or the college's portal to their OSAP application. So basically what they will have to fill in is their financial information and things like their program information, their first name, last name, mailing address, everything will be exported from their university or college portal. Obviously, if there are students who are already in school, they can go to our website and start applying from there. We did launch the application for next year on November 8th, so it is open for students to go ahead and apply now. And once the students have applied, we do encourage them to log back into their OSAP account and make sure that they don't have any outstanding documents that they need to hand in. They can also find out how much funding they're getting from there. And we do encourage students to regularly check in just so like they stay on top of everything that's required of them. There's so much more information out there. So if you have further questions, you can talk to the guidance counselors at your school that the student is going to right now, or you can contact the financial aid office of the college or university that the student is interested in going to. We do have a full list of the public colleges and universities on our website. So if you click on the ones that you're interested in, it'll give you the contact information for the financial aid office at that school. So you can go ahead and give them a call or an email or something if you have any further questions. And obviously you can also contact our OSAP contact center if you have questions about how to apply for OSAP or any general questions. If you need further information, like I said, we do have our actual website where you can go ahead and get more information. We do have our calculator on there as well, which can help you plan out your financial situation much better because it can give you a little bit of a breakdown as to how much you can get. And we do have sessions for students that they can sign up for once they're in university or college to learn more information about like how to repay their loans and general things like that. So there will be like ongoing resources to help students out with this process even after they've applied. And I guess we'll open the floor for questions now, or maybe we'll wait until later.
Thank you so much, Kaschka and Zaineb. That was fantastic. So what we're going to do now is hold our questions, although actually we are encouraging everyone to use the Q&A feature who are joining us live through Zoom, or if you're on Facebook, you can ask questions there, or go to Twitter, because we have Farida, who's also taking care of our social media, and we're gathering all the questions. So ask, ask, ask. So we are now going to move to our next guest, which is Chris Cooper. He's the Regional Director for Scholarships Canada. And without further ado, here we go.
All right. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. Thanks, Allison, for the invite to have Scholarships Canada on as part of this event. So today I'm going to talk about scholarships, a little bit about Scholarships Canada, but more specifically about scholarships in general, and maybe some assumptions that some people have about scholarships and some common myths that we might want to address. One sec here. Give me one sec. Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. Okay, so higher education and scholarships. So first of all, why do we need a scholarship? Obviously, one of the big questions is how are you going to pay for school? So there's going to be various different things. We just saw a great presentation from OSAP, so that's probably might be one of the factors of how you're going to pay for everything. Your own personal savings, your family and parents, perhaps other loan options, but scholarships and bursaries could very easily play a role in how you pay for your education. So one of the things I want to take a look at is what does $1,000 cover? One of the reasons I want to do this is just to consider, you want to consider all your different costs, and everything does add up. So you definitely want to consider that ahead when you're sort of planning and budgeting how you're going to pay for school. And let's just consider, what does a $1,000 scholarship cover? The other reason why $1,000 is there's actually a lot of scholarships under $1,000, $500, etc., that actually receive a lot less applicants in general than some of the larger, more than $1,000 scholarships, which may receive many applicants. So that leads me into talking about some of the scholarship myths. So we're going to address some of the common assumptions about scholarships. And myth number one, I don't have the marks. There's a lot of scholarships that are merit-based, that's true. A lot of the ones that the schools offer that are automatic awards, that are entrance awards essentially, these are typically merit-based and are connected to marks. And these are often, entrance awards are ones that you don't need to apply to. So what we want to do is focus on the ones that you need to apply to. You should research entrance awards. If you're looking at a very specific field of study, you should take a look at what different schools, because tuition may be very similar across several schools, but what might make a difference for you might be the different entrance award levels that these institutions offer. But there are a large percentage of awards that do not require a specific academic average. So that's something to consider. Myth number 2, there is a lot of competition. Certainly there are, especially with some of the larger scholarship awards, there are a lot of applicants, but there are, in our database, as we saw on the first screen, there's 100,000 scholarships that we list on Scholarships Canada. So there's a ton of scholarships out there, and many of them do not receive as many applicants as they wish they would. In fact, 3% of all scholarships receive no applications at all. Now this might sound like a small number, 3%, but that typically represents millions of dollars in scholarships that go unclaimed. Another thing to consider is the fact that some scholarships may be that if they do not receive very many applicants, they may award it to someone who does not meet 100% of the criteria that the scholarship was indicated on the scholarship. I do recommend that you reach out and contact financial aid offices at the school and scholarship administrators specifically. They can probably give you some insight onto perhaps how many scholarship applicants they typically receive, and this might give you an idea on whether, for example, if you don't have 100% of the criteria, should I not bother applying to this because they receive hundreds of applicants, or maybe they only receive a handful. Myth number 3, only schools give scholarships. A significant percentage of scholarships are administered by the post-secondary institutions, certainly all of their entrance awards, but also many other awards. They are an ideal organization to manage these awards and administrate these awards, but there are many, many scholarships that are managed and administrated by corporations, associations, and non-institutional organizations. A lot of corporations have corporate social responsibility, and this might fall under this. They may create foundations under someone's name, for example, that maybe the award is named after. There's lots of different small awards that are connected to maybe your workplace, different organizations and that you may belong to, that you may participate in, maybe even your parents' workplace, your part-time workplace, sporting organizations, anything that, one of the things that we do recommend is that you do network. Talk to your coaches if you're playing sports, talk to your parents, to your friends, to your co-workers if you're working. Talk to them about scholarships, because often someone may bring up, I've heard of a scholarship, and it might come by word of mouth, because no one is marketing scholarships. It's very rare that all that money that usually goes into a scholarship goes 100% to students. When you create a scholarship, you don't really want to create a budget to build awareness for it, let's say. So you really have to go out and find it. And oftentimes, one of the things that we do recommend is networking, talking to other people, asking about scholarships. Myth number 4, scholarship deadlines are at a certain time of the year. There's certain times of the year that are definitely busier than others. Certainly, scholarships, you're looking at awarding scholarships when you enter school in September, and a lot of people do think that it's just for first year, but it's actually all through the year. But we know this because we collect deadlines for all the scholarships, and every month of every year there are, and for every different level of year and level of education, there are scholarships. So it is not a specific time of year. It is throughout the year. And throughout every year of your education, post-secondary education, there are awards available. Myth number 5, I'm not in financial need. The difference between a scholarship and a bursary is typically connected to a financial need. In Scholarships Canada, we do find that about a third of scholarships are connected to financial need, but that really leaves the majority of scholarships that are not connected to any type of financial need. So let's just review quickly the myths that we just addressed, and that's one is that they're not necessarily based on marks, they're not merit-based. There's tons of awards that are not merit-based. Theirs is an award for you. This is just addressing the competition and how many different people are applying. There's tons of awards out there. This is one thing that we really try to push people, because I find students typically their attitude is that, you know what, I don't have the marks, I'm not in financial need, there's no scholarship out there that I'm going to find. But we really want you to believe that there is, because a lot of it is just going out there and putting in the time to find and apply for scholarships. More than just schools award scholarships, lots of foundations, corporations, and organizations award scholarships as well. Deadlines are year-round, not just year-round, but through every grade and level of education, there are scholarships available. And you don't need to be in financial need. There's a scholarship for you. You know, at this point, I often talk about some of the different types of scholarships that are out there. There's, for example, there's some crazy scholarships. There's even one for tall people. So if you're a man, I think it's 6'5" or taller, you can apply. I think if you're female, if you're 5'11" or taller. There's one for if you're perhaps a Star Trek fan, you may belong to the Star Trek Academy, and they give away a scholarship every year. There's one for the duct tape company that does back to prom scholarship, and essentially if you create a prom dress out of duct tape, they award a scholarship for that. So there's all kinds of different scholarships out there and some of them are crazy, some of them are, but again, there's tens of thousands of scholarships. Every one is different. So where to start? I'm going to talk to you about scholarshipscanada.com and how to use that tool to find scholarships. But some of the things that you might want to consider is, start collecting information. Obviously, think about any kind of sports or community involvement you might be connected to, but also collect some of your information. Like it's a good idea to put together like a resume or a personal statement. A lot of them do require essay writing. So next section, just going to talk quickly about Scholarships Canada. So what do you want to sign up for Scholarships Canada? First of all, it's a free service. It only takes about 10 minutes to sign up. Parents can sign up as well as students. We do ask, if you fill it out as though you're 18, we do ask that you identify as a parent. You'll still get the same matches. Essentially, this is a matching tool. So how you answer and you fill out a profile, we try to curate those 100,000 plus awards down to a shorter list that's more relevant to you based on how you answer those questions. So you create a profile, and again, we try to match you to scholarships, and that is based on your criteria. There's also communication ongoing that we want to send you about scholarships that would be relevant to you. So do carefully read over those subscriptions, because some of them are things like deadline reminders, which we highly recommend that you subscribe to. Just going to go through another thing that you can do even without signing up. You can just search the database. You can search by scholarship name, by school, by field of study, or who administers and provides the scholarship. There's tons of information available on each scholarship, including, for example, the contact information for that scholarship. So we do recommend that, actually reach out to them, ask them about it. You might really receive some valuable information that will help you apply to that scholarship. Another example here, retail as a career. So if you work part-time in retail, they actually give out 25 $1,000 scholarship awards every year, Retail Council of Canada. College Week Live, they've got a great scholarship running right now. It's worth $5,000. This is essentially like a virtual college fair that is based in the US, but they do a lot of work with Canadian schools too. So number one tip, apply for scholarships. The biggest thing we hear when people win a scholarship is, what would be your advice to students? Say apply, you know, and most of them say, I didn't think I'd win it, but I did. A few more tips on Scholarships Canada is keep your profile up to date. So, you know, come back when you get a chance, when your criteria changes, update your profile. Sign up for scholarship alerts. We'll send you information about things like deadlines of scholarships that might be coming up. When you're ready to start applying, you know, start looking over things like I mentioned, your personal statement, cover letters. You know what, you might even want to have sort of a story about you, because a lot of them ask for essay writing. So you might want to think about what's special about you and what types of essays that you might write. But everyone's different, so it's hard to prepare for that. So just finally, some useful resources. Check our events listing. We list any kind of events. For example, this event right now is listed on our site, on Scholarships Canada. Connect with us on social media. You can reach out to us directly at info@scholarshipscanada.com. My name is Chris Cooper. I'm here from Scholarships Canada. It's a part of Edge Interactive. You can reach me directly at chris.cooper@edgeip.com. I'd be happy to connect with you further if you wanted any further information about scholarships or scholarshipscanada.com specifically.
Now, looking at time, we're trying to keep on schedule. So we do have one question here. And what we're going to do is, when do we start looking at OSAP and scholarships is the question here. And so, at least from my perspective, it is about starting early. Kaschka and Zaineb, if you can agree with me. The earlier you start, the better, if I'm not mistaken, as well as Chris. Chris has joined us here.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
So it's starting early, would you say? Like,
Yes,
would you looking at this, would you start earlier?
Yes, it's starting early, and parents actually sitting down with their kids and explaining to them what comes after high school, which is post-secondary education. What are their plans for post-secondary education? How do they anticipate themselves funding themselves or supporting themselves to pursue post-secondary education? Yes, the government is there to support them in terms of OSAP funding through scholarships and through bursts, grants and loans. Yes, the institution is there to support them through scholarships and bursaries, but what do they have to bring to the table? And so the government believes that OSAP, it's a shared responsibility where the parents coming together to support their child to pursue post-secondary education, as well as the government through the federal and provincial government coming together, as well as the institution through scholarships and bursaries. So it's a combination of those three bodies coming together to support the child to pursue post-secondary education. So parents need to really sit with their child and explain this to them and let them know that there are opportunities out there for them to pursue their post-secondary education. So even if families are from low income, they still would need to bring some form of contribution to the table, but there is help to assist them with the remaining in terms of funding to support themselves. So it's always starting early and getting that ingrained in their brain that, you know what, you're going to think of going to post-secondary education. This is the steps that you need to take to get there, and there are different organizations and bodies out there to support them on that journey.
Fantastic.
They can go ahead and apply to all of the universities and colleges that, you know, they're applying to. And then whoever offer they accept, that's the application that'll get processed. So it's one thing to do early and kind of get out of the way, and then focus on like other things that you have later on.
Fantastic. And Chris, I mean, would you say grade 7 is a good time to start thinking and planning at least?
Certainly, I mean, it's never too early to start thinking about how you're going to pay for school. But one thing I'll add specifically about, grade 10, grade 11 is a time when if you're researching scholarships, a lot of scholarships are going to be there year after year. So the scholarships that you see available today are going to most likely be the scholarships that when it's actually time for you to apply, they're going to be there. So it's never too early to start researching those awards. One thing you can do on scholarshipscanada.com as well is to save scholarships. So if you see one that's interesting, it's relevant to you, you can save it and it will store it in your dashboard. So when you log back in, say months later, that scholarship will be in a saved list so that you can start building that list of scholarships that you found that are maybe connect with a specific skill or interest that you have that you think would be something that you would want to apply to when the time comes. Save it to your dashboard. The other thing I'll mention too is I mentioned there was a scholarship alert that you can sign up for. This is like a deadline reminder, so that if you do have scholarships that you've saved on Scholarships Canada, a deadline reminder will be emailed to you to remind you when some of these deadlines come up in the future.
Great. Well, thank you so much to Zaineb and Kaschka and Chris for taking time in your day to speak to you about how we can ease the burden on the wallet and, afford post-secondary education. The one question that I think as a group, we want to end this presentation with a discussion starter question that parents can take home and ask their children tonight. Would you say a good one would be, how can we afford your education?
Yes.
And then, that would start exploring all the different options. Obviously, we have a great start with OSAP and scholarships.